Manhwa title in the right corner of the screen. Enjoy watching. It all started in a past life. To escape from the harsh reality, the girl begins to read a fantasy novel called Blade of Vengeance. The main character is called Lojian. He is looking for Diomed to avenge the death of his mother. Diomed was usually described as a cold and wicked great magician, but he was originally a hero respected by many. But everything changed since his beloved woman suddenly left him. It was already difficult for him, and now on top of all this, there are accusations that no one else but him could be involved in this. As a result of all this injustice, the desperate Diomed closes in on himself and becomes cold to everyone around him. And now, a few years later, he still turns into a villain, committing terrible things. He became so indifferent to everyone and everything that he even turned a blind eye to the death of his own daughter, Sylvia. At the age of 17, the girl dies at the hands of a clan of black dragons. But what is more terrible is the betrayal of the man she trusted her entire life, her own father. She was suffering, screaming, calling for help, and he just calmly looked at everything that was happening, as if there was nothing wrong with it. At that moment, when the fire had almost completely engulfed her entire body, her father uttered the last words, which were felt more painfully than the flames. Just as your birth didn't cause any emotions in me, so your death doesn't matter. Without you, this world will only be better. All this time, the little girl lived with him in the same house, saw him as a support and a pillar. But as it turned out, since he said goodbye to her so calmly without blinking an eye, it means he didn't love her for a single day or a single second. It so happened that in her first life, everything was about the same. But having been reborn into the body of the heroine from the novel, she will have to live through a different but very similar scenario. Previously, Milana reread this novel many times and knows by heart what awaits her in this world. Accordingly, as soon as she got into this body, she immediately thought that she urgently needed to come up with something and change her destiny. Given the opportunity to live another life, in another world, it would be strange to go with the flow because you can at least try to do something. Sylvia decided that she would think about it a little later because now she was a little confused by the events. In the original story, she dies when the main plot has not even begun. There were only a couple of lines about her. The girl could not have died before the main character's mother, so she did not hope that her storyline could take a different turn. But everything happens somehow strangely, differently, and perhaps this is her chance. Meanwhile, the girl sees a snowflake for the first time in her life. She even stops to look at it more closely, and I couldn't believe that such beauty could be seen every day. It's also somehow much brighter here, and the cold is almost not felt. The temperature around is extremely pleasant. It is very light, comfortable, and you don't even want to go anywhere. Unfortunately, she has a lot of things to do ahead of her. She needs to go to the Tower of Diomed, unless of course nothing stops her along the way, until she decides to resist the plot and thinks that even if her life has a different path, she is still destined to die at 17. She changes her mind so quickly that it wouldn't be surprising if in a couple of days she already has a plan for how to survive. It is obvious that there is no protection to be expected in this tower. Anything can happen here. But she was already here, admired the beauty for a bit, and came closer to talk to the guards. It was unlikely that they would let her in here just like that. But she knew what to tell them, and in the end, they didn't even detain her. Sylvia herself is already confused by her uncertainty. At first, she wanted to change the plot, but now she is no longer attached to life and is not afraid of anything. It remains only to see what will happen next. She clearly didn't come here just like that and has something in mind. Memories from the past still appear from time to time, but she has already accepted the new reality and even gotten used to the new body. The only thing she decided for sure was that it was time to enjoy life, and even the most insignificant moments, because in the past it was impossible. What can we say if on the way she was surprised by a small snowflake and an unremarkable winter landscape on the street? Meanwhile, Sylvia is already in the waiting room. She thought that she would be met quickly, but she had to wait for a cup of tea. So 2 hours passed. Any other person in her place would have left long ago, but she is still here, because there is nothing else to do anyway. And it is warm here and definitely better than outside. I wonder what she's doing here, who she came to see. Her acquaintances here could be either her father or other relatives. Surprisingly, she is not even embarrassed. She enjoys all possible privileges and comfort to the maximum. She even asked to bring her another teapot. Here she already has thoughts that it would be nice to stay here. She is already starting to get used to this place. And at the very least, it's much better to live here than in the Dragon Clan, where her life will actually end. There's enough food, books, and it's not so boring. Judging by her thoughts, this is still her father's house, and that explains a lot. All that remains is to avoid catching his eye, which is almost impossible. She has some crazy plan, although who knows? Maybe it will only be better this way, and for now, this is the only thing she could influence, especially since it is better to stay on the street and hide than to come to the Dragon Clan. Over a decade ago, the world was thrown into chaos when the King of Evil Spirits unleashed his curse, allowing spirits to cross the boundary between the world of the living and the dead. In order to end this, Diomed joined the group to fight against evil spirits. It was a group of the strongest warriors on the continent, and the most interesting thing is that among them was her mother. The girl's name was Betsriki, and in addition to her main merits, she was known for her incredible beauty. Unlike other dragons, she was sweet and friendly, with a truly kind heart, sensitive to the world around her. Diomed fell in love with her as if it was destined by fate. He could not imagine his life without her and wanted to make her the happiest. They even swore to love each other forever, even though they understood that at any moment someone could leave this world. But they did it anyway. As soon as the King of Evil Spirits was destroyed, from that moment on, problems began that seemed to appear out of nowhere. The girl did not keep her oath, constantly moved away from Diomed, and for a long time could not explain what was happening. At some point, she admits that she never loved him, but the guy saw only one thing in his eyes. She is cheating, and there must be some explanation for this. He knew her too well. Betsrich could not change her mind and fall out of love with him so quickly. Everything was great for them. Everyone around them envied their relationship. He was ready to do anything for her. But one day, she became unlike herself. She forbade him to touch her. It was obvious how unpleasant his touch was to her. And in the end, she couldn't hold back and hurt him very badly. So much so that he miraculously remained alive. The guy barely tried to stay on his feet and still did not believe that this was not a dream. His beloved reacted aggressively to his every word and each time began to hate him more and more. Diomed had never seen her so indifferent towards him. He tried to solve something, but all in vain. This only pushed her away more and more, made her nervous, and in the end, the girl didn't explain anything. She kept saying some strange phrases, something like, if she had known, she would never have gone with him, spoke for some kind of game, his naivety, for this cruel world where you can't trust anyone, word for word. He lost all desire to save this relationship, and the realization arose that most likely it never existed. Their story ended very tragically, and the reason why she did this to him is still known to this day only to her and the King of Evil Spirits. Everything is not quite as it seemed at first glance. The girl was really always sincere with him. She just wanted to hide the fact that the King of Evil Spirits had put a curse on her, and she had very little time left so that her beloved would not have to find out about it, and even more so, see it. She deliberately pretended that she fell out of love with him. It seemed to her that it would be better for him to hate her than to see her dead and not be able to live peacefully on. Since Sylvia now knows the whole truth, maybe she can stop her father from turning into a villain. And thus, everything else will change too. The girl doubts that she will succeed because after their breakup, he began to close himself off from everyone and is unlikely to even want to see her. Meanwhile, the door opens and there is no time to think. You need to act right here and now. There may never be another chance. The man didn't even say hello. He started to scare her from the doorway. How can she claim that she is his daughter and ordered her to explain? He also warned that she would have to pay very dearly for his time, which was worth a lot. Sylvia is sitting on the couch and already regrets that she ended up here at all. This man is not the friendliest, although she did not expect anything else from him. I wonder if he has some kind of problems, or if he is like this all the time, because if it is the latter, then it will be very difficult for her with him. He is a real villain, as everyone says. His aura speaks for itself. You don't even want to stay around him for long. As it turned out, she wouldn't even have to prove anything. The assistant had already found out everything and said that according to the letter from the Dragon Clan, shortly before her death, Betsrich said that the father of this girl is the Lord of the Magic Tower. However, since she believes only the Dragon Clan. As soon as he heard the name, Betsricha, he immediately rolled up his sleeves, which meant he was definitely interested. At some point, his hand begins to approach her face. Sylvia has already managed to think up everything possible. Although in reality, everything was not as scary as she saw it, he just decided to come closer and examine at least some similarities, if there were any. He has been doing this for so long that it could be good or bad. Either way, we need to wait for his answer. And now he's ready to say something. The girl is ready to say some detailed phrase, but he just said, "Understandable." Sylvia really looks a lot like her mother. He understood it right away, but he doesn't say anything to the child yet. It's as if he's deliberately keeping the intrigue going. Although it's possible that despite the resemblance, he'll still refuse her and say that she can't possibly be his daughter. And that's not all. If you look at their eye color, it's absolutely the same. So there's no point in looking at her face. I wonder what he's thinking about now, because everything is more than obvious. But the tender hugs and acceptance into the house haven't happened yet. In the end, he abruptly let go of her face, asks what's in it, and hints that she won't hear anything good from him. The gentleman believes that this does not prove their relationship. This is too little. And if the girl hoped that everything would be so easy, then he will disappoint her. He can't get the thought out of his head that that girl couldn't stand him, and it's impossible that she would give birth to his daughter. He didn't want to listen to anything anymore, asked her to get out of this house immediately, and warned that if he saw her here again, nothing good would happen. He understands what she expected from him, why she came, but she said that Sylvia won't get anything. She can't even hope for it. As offensive as it may sound, she is not going to stop. Everything was expected, so we need to think of a new plan. Even his assistant didn't think that everything would turn out this way. He even stayed with her and started thinking about what to do next. The master didn't give any instructions, and since the girl was still here, so now it's up to him to decide what to do with her. Although there's nothing to think about, the safest thing would be to leave this mansion and really not catch anyone's eye. It's weird, but this guy has something in mind. He didn't say a word for her to leave, but on the contrary, he asks if she has any ideas. Sylvia has no idea what to think anymore. She doesn't count on anyone. She just decided to take a lot of time, rest, and then act further. Michael Belafanian, he is 18 years old. In the book, he is the right hand and nephew of Diarmid. Therefore, he is also one of the main characters here. Later, he himself will contribute to the atrocities of the Diarmid because he too will become a villain, which he has dreamed of since childhood, which is why he is here, in this place. The heir of the Diarmid and a genius magician, having lost his parents at a young age, he began to study magic, and very seriously, which is what made him who he is. He has been stubbornly pursuing his goal since his youth, spending all his time on it and is not going to stop there. But now, this is not the main thing. He does not kick the child out, as if he is thinking how to get benefit from this whole situation, and looks at her with such a look that it is no longer clear what to expect from him now. Even if the girl tries to leave, it is unlikely that he will allow her to do it so easily. Sylvia doesn't understand anything. She just sits opposite him, drinks the rest of her tea, and doesn't even think about anything. Anyway, if somehow she manages to stay here, she will only be glad, so she told him so. Do whatever you want, and if I stay here for a couple of days, that would be great. He was so struck by this answer that the guy even forgot what he had just been thinking about. He expected to see some fear, trembling, but she was not so easily frightened. Sylvia is absolutely calm. She doesn't even look at him when she drinks tea, and not even all adults can do that. And then he decides to test her, asks if the girl really expected something good from meeting her father, and how upset she is now. Mikhail doesn't even let her say a word. He puts pressure on her and makes her understand how the master doesn't care about his daughter, even if she turns out to be his own. And he also reminded that they could be cousins, if of course Sylvia isn't deceiving anyone. And he left the most interesting thing for last. He asked her to listen carefully to everything that he was about to tell her, namely, that the only way for her to survive here was known only to him, and only he would decide whether she would know about it or not. He acts like he's the boss here, although he has no idea that this girl is not afraid. She knows very well what she wants and is not as naive as he thinks. He even got up from the table, looked at her with his special look, but nothing happened. She didn't react in any way, can only laugh at this, but the girl is polite. She does not react to this. She just asked to add tea and bring some sweets. And then he has no choice but to prove which of them is stronger and more resilient both morally and physically, as if it wasn't funny to him that he was going to compete with a child, being the main deputy of the main villain in the area. Sylvia is ready to do anything, just so that she is not kicked out of here. She even became interested in what he has already come up with there. The guy asked her to leave her things here, and then says that he will now arrange it for her, which also sounds a little strange. It turns out he wants to give a short tour of the magic tower, although how this relates to their competition is still unclear. Meanwhile, they pass by a huge window, and the girl notices that it's as if there was no snow. Just recently, she was catching snowflakes. Everything was covered in snow, and now there is sunshine outside the window, as if winter had long since passed. Moreover, she even saw several flowers, which surprised her even more, because it is impossible. But as soon as she went further and looked into the next window, she realized that each window showed a different picture. In one, she saw spring. In the second, a beautiful sunset. And it was truly incredible. She already loves this tour so much, she wants to stop at each window for at least an hour. It's just amazing. He didn't like that she was too slow. That's not what he wanted to show her, and asks her not to lag behind. And warned that if there was another such situation, he would leave her here alone, and she would have to look for where to go herself. Meanwhile, the tour began. He said that absolutely all the windows, ceilings, stairs, and walls, all this was created by magic many years ago, but not everyone knows about it, because everything looks very realistic, and you can't say that there is anything unreal here. It's easy to get lost here because the rooms are too similar to each other. And as for the corridors, they are like labyrinths for guests, so she shouldn't lag behind. He warned her about this. Sounds impressive. She doesn't even ask any questions, looks with great surprise and eagerly waits for him to show her something else. Despite the fact that she had reread the plot many times, which ended up here in reality, everything felt completely different, real. Still, despite such wonderful moments, the girl tries not to forget that wherever she ends up, no one in this world is happy about her existence. It is dangerous to trust someone, and even more so, to agree to dubious proposals. She will have to accept that there is no point in dreaming about a family. She can only enjoy what happens, or if she is lucky. And in the meantime, they are already in the dining room of the Magic Tower. Magic is also present here, but more on that later. Magicians love their work so much that they stop learning new things even during lunch. And also, there is so much variety of everything here that she herself has developed a strong appetite. Everything looks so beautiful that it is impossible to resist. Naturally, he offered her a snack because they had plenty of it, and he didn't really want to look at a hungry child. Also, the girl, of course, heard that magicians eat very little, but she didn't think that it was so little. In all the time she's been here, she hasn't seen a single person eat or bite something. It's like they're feeding on the information they've been studying all this time. No one has touched the food, and it's very strange for her. Sylvia loves food very much. She never misses meals, and there has never been a single case where she did not finish something or refused an extra portion. Maybe it is because of her age, but still, everything and everywhere here is very unusual. Meanwhile, when she had already walked around the whole room, people started to pay attention to her. And this is not surprising. I wonder why. The guy even stood up for her. He asked the magicians. Don't they really have their own business? And why do they react like that? As if they saw not a child, but a penguin or some other unusual creature. Everyone immediately started apologizing, although there was no reason to. He reacted as if they had no right to even look at her. The girl realized how quickly his mood could change and was surprised why everyone was so afraid of him. He probably expected the same from her, but she showed her stability in time and nothing worked out for him. At the moment when we were talking with the magicians, she quickly went to the table with buns and decided to have a snack while he still couldn't see anything. She had already picked up several buns, noticed that he had turned in her direction, and was already expecting to hear indignation. But as it turned out, everything is a little different. He only reminded that there are plates and cutlery here, so it is not necessary to hold everything in your hands. So her clothes might get dirty, and if she trips, everything will fall on the floor. He even helped her with this. Although after what just happened, it was very unexpected. He changed so much when communicating with her that she didn't even expect it, although she was pleasantly surprised and grateful to him for the hint. Suddenly, instead of being polite any longer, she begins to take advantage of his kindness and asks him to leave her here alone, at least for a while. The guy even got a little offended. He thought that he had managed to annoy her and asked what the problem was so that he could sit at the table with her. In the end, he managed to persuade them. She didn't make him very angry, although she herself didn't understand why at first it was so important for her to eat alone. No one would take anything from her and they would lose time, which no one would like either. And also, as it turned out, there is a rule in the cafeteria. If a person takes a certain portion or a certain number of buns, he must eat everything down to the last crumb. How much he took. The guy did not have time to warn her about this, but as usually happens, ignorance of the rules does not exempt from punishment. There was no time given to this moment in the book. There was not a single line about it. But now she is not interested in it. The girl just wants to eat. She will eat as much as she can, and if she has to leave something on her plate, she will solve problems as they come. And also, she eats everything so quickly that Mikhail never ceases to be surprised. Everything looks as if this person has never eaten anything like that. Everything was fine. He even stopped looking at her. But as soon as he turned back, he saw tears in her eyes. He even started to cry a little, thought that he was guilty of something, and immediately asked what happened because nothing bad had happened. But he already felt guilty. The girl quickly wiped away her tears. She said that everything was fine and nothing like that happened, although he had just seen for himself that she was all in tears and was crying a lot. No matter how she explains that he got it all wrong, Mikhail wants to know the truth and demands an explanation from her. The thought arose that someone might have said something rude to this child while he was not listening, although it is unlikely, because he was here all this time and could not have failed to notice it. In the end, he decided that he couldn't just leave it like that, started to understand the situation, and even suggested that the buns might not be tasty, and she was just trying to eat everything to the last. He tried everything himself. There was nothing unusual. The buns were delicious. Now he even more does not understand what she didn't like and what the matter was. Mikhail sees a person eating something and crying for the first time. And he didn't say anything bad to her. The food was delicious, and he wasn't so rude to her as to react like that. There's only one option left. Did she really want to be alone so much that she cried because he stayed and didn't listen to her? And then she asks to bring more bread. She didn't have enough buns, and from that moment on, he got so confused that he even stopped trying to figure it out. Meanwhile, there are already so many empty plates on the table that it seems as if she has some kind of abyss inside her, and no matter how much she eats, it will still not be enough. He doesn't understand how this is possible. Even he, when he is very hungry, can't eat more than a couple of buns. But she has already eaten more than 50, and it seems she doesn't even plan to stop. Sylvia doesn't look tired. She looks like she hasn't eaten anything and takes the buns one by one as if she had just started eating them. He even began to doubt whether she was human, because perhaps it was just a mask, and in fact her real face looked completely different. Here he started to use soundproofing magic, although it is not clear why. But he does it for some reason, and in the meantime, the girl says that she has already repeated more than once. She is a dragon, at least half, but still a dragon. That's why she eats about 100 times more than normal people. But that's only if she's not particularly hungry or eats something not very tasty. And also, Sylvia never tried anything she only tasted in the dragon village. They said they would take care of her, but in reality, everything was different there. Her relatives didn't prepare any special dishes for her. She had to look for whatever she could find on the street, if there was any at all. And most of all, she hated the way she was treated and made to suffer from hunger. So it is not surprising that when the opportunity arose, she decided to make up for everything she lacked. Thanks to the fact that other magicians eat very little, she has a lot of everything left, and the girl is incredibly happy about it, although she could easily eat the same amount more. When suddenly something strange happened, she was sitting calmly at the table and was about to leave, but at some point, she started looking around because she clearly felt that someone was watching her and that this person was very close. It's a bit strange, but yes. She looked at one girl, didn't even look in her direction. But for some reason, Sylvia is sure of the opposite. Something is wrong here. It's as if she doesn't see what's really happening and doesn't understand how this is possible. Although, it's a strange question, because this is the Tower of the Magicians, and nothing is impossible here. At that moment, when the girl had already relaxed and stopped thinking about it, it was a big mistake. As soon as she turned away and ran for a new batch of buns, some man looked in her direction and with such a look as if he had something against her. And in the meantime, they are already in the library. The girl is not as hungry as in the morning, and yet it was still very little. When she just started looking at everything, Mikhail says that he needs to leave for work and asked her not to leave here so that he knows where to come back for her and can find her. There is a lot of stuff here. She agreed without any problems and ran to look at everything that looked interesting. But before leaving, he still caught her and asked her to listen to what he was about to tell her, and very carefully, he has no idea if she is really the Tower Master's daughter. So she must be careful because dragons, as much as it sounds, are very valuable material for people. It is said that the first reagent was mixed with the blood of a dragon, and the holy sword from the temple was made from its bones. Usually attacks occur on young dragons that have not yet had time to awaken. Because of this, young dragons should be protected. However, she currently does not have an official guardian, and if the girl loses her vigilance, something could happen to her and no one will be able to help. He couldn't help but warn her about this, at least because she is a child and most people here are not happy with her. She has no choice but to accept it, resign herself to it, and thank him for the warning, although it doesn't give her any benefit in principle. As soon as she thanked him for her concern, he immediately got angry and said that the girl had misunderstood everything, that it wasn't concern at all, although he couldn't call it anything else. He started to quickly leave somewhere without even saying goodbye. But Sylvia was just being polite and didn't think that she would react so strangely. It's as if he's trying to appear rude on purpose, although his words and actions say otherwise. The guy had already left. She was left here alone and thought, why not read something interesting? Because as he had already said, she would have a lot of time. And in order not to waste time, she has already approached the shelf and is even thinking of taking a few books in case she doesn't like one or in case she doesn't have to come back several times. And in the meantime, as soon as she thought about how to get this book from the very top shelf, it itself moved out of its row and immediately ended up in her hands. It's incredible. Although, given the fact that this is a library of magicians, everything is in order, you'll just have to get used to it. And also, something strange appeared near her. It was some kind of ball that was moving and seemed to start following her as soon as she found herself here alone. She saw it and was surprised. How hadn't she noticed it before? It even makes a barely perceptible sound, and probably it's some kind of assistant, which has already turned out to be very useful. The girl quickly became friends with this so-called assistant, although she doesn't even know what to call him, what he is, and whether he has a name. Being in such an environment, you also want to do something magical, to become like everyone else. But unfortunately, she can't do any of this yet. Sylvia saw Aunt Eurissa teaching her cousins, and all she remembered were a few minor things she barely managed to catch a glimpse of. And in her position, asking someone else to teach her magic, especially after the backlash she received, seems like a luxury. No one would do it for sure. She has no idea if she can figure out the theory on her own, but she is very interested in learning about other types of magic besides clan magic. After opening the first book, she realizes that she doesn't understand anything, which means she'll have to find something she can at least read. It wasn't as easy as she thought anyway. There was plenty of time, and why not try right now? The girl wanted to go back to the shelf, put the books back and look for something new, when suddenly someone came up to her. Judging by the color of his hair and eyes, he looks very much like the one who was following her in the dining room. She herself did not understand this, but it is not worth forgetting about it. He introduced himself as a magician from a magic tower, and his name is Movin. At first glance, the guy is very polite. He probably just decided to get acquainted. But it seems that everything is not so simple, and it is unlikely that someone would approach a child without a reason to ask what her name is. All the most interesting things started at the moment when this man starts asking what he could not possibly know, namely, why Mikael left her alone and went off on business. Unlike normal humans, dragons have well-developed instincts. They can sense and distinguish other people's presence better than most people. She immediately remembered that strange look in the dining room, and for some reason, thinking about it right now, she seemed to feel that there was some connection in this, and was very wary. Surprisingly, Sylvia did not pretend as if she did not notice anything, and asked directly, how did he know that she was here with him and that he had gone away on business and was not somewhere nearby? It would be very interesting to hear what he would say about this. The girl would understand everything anyway, but it wouldn't hurt to listen to him. Surprisingly, he didn't get confused. He even pretended that there was nothing strange here, as if he had just seen them together when he passed by some time ago, and also asked if she didn't know that now is the period of submitting research papers. Magicians at this time are more sensitive, so he warned that she should not stay alone in such a place. The period of submitting research papers, she read about it in the Sword of Retribution. The rules of the Magic Tower, which Diamond puts forward, are as follows. Strict approach based on merit and results. If someone misses the deadline for submitting an application or fails to provide research results, they are immediately kicked out of the tower. They are very strict about this. That's why everyone around is very worried. Everyone is afraid for their future, because if something happens, it would be very disappointing to waste so much time in all those dreams that are very close to being achieved. In addition, due to the closed way of life in the tower, entry to outsiders is strictly prohibited. Her presence here may seem strange. This partially explains why the guy could not pass by and approached her to at least get to know her a little and find out what she was doing here. He even suggests leaving here for a safe place, which already sounds a little suspicious. Everyone has already taken everything they need from the library, and there will definitely be no one here in the near future. This is the safest place in the entire tower, which means he definitely has something in mind and is not just suggesting this. The girl pretended not to understand anything. She replied that everything was fine and said that Mikhail would be back soon anyway, so he had nothing to worry about. She hoped that he would simply go about his business, but nothing of the sort happened. This man stayed and didn't even hide the fact that his mood had changed dramatically. He is no longer as kind and polite as he was initially. He starts to get nervous, and this again proves the fact that his intentions are not the best. In the end, he was able to calm down, even apologized. Although he was unable to improve the situation, she finally stopped trusting him and was convinced that she understood everything correctly. It's a good thing that Mikhail warned her about everything, and she knew in advance that some people here should be feared. And in the meantime, while they were talking, several magicians came to the library. But when this guy started shouting, they asked him to be quieter, made a remark several times. But this time, they addressed him not so politely. They warned that if he interfered with any of them again, he would regret it very much and would hardly be able to come back here again. So he left her, apologized to those people, felt very awkward and realized that today was clearly not his day. When they were alone, there was no longer any point in pretending that she was busy with something, although while he was nearby, she pretended to read a book, although she did not understand a single word in it. The girl is very tired. She didn't think it would be so hard, but still, she holds on and is sure that everything will work out. Mikhail asked. She will stay here as long as necessary, wait for him, and finally ask him to show her a room where she can rest. And now the long-awaited evening has arrived. She was shown the room, but it is a little different from what she really wanted. There was no point in hoping for anything better, but there was hope. Sylvia looks out the window, and the maid even feels a little guilty. It's awkward to offer something like this to a child. There are almost no amenities, the floor is cold, the bed is not the best, and it's far from sunny. She says that it may be hard for young ladies to be in such conditions, but the girl replied that she is stronger than she seems, and was grateful even for that. Moreover, this place was chosen by Mikhail, and if so, it means that he did not find anything better for her, of course. There are plenty of rooms with good repairs around, but they are also much closer to her father's room than this one. There was not much choice, and since she had to stay here, she asked for a blanket to cover herself with, in case it would be very cold at night. The maid apologized for completely forgetting about it, and said that she would bring everything now. She ran very quickly for clean bed linen, and at that moment, the girl thought what would happen if the woman accidentally let it slip to whom she was taking it, and her father found out about it. No matter what happens, there is nowhere to go. She has to get out of the situation as best she can, and if she is destined to remain alone, then so it will be. She will do everything possible on her own. The main thing for her is not to end up on the street, and even more so, not to return to the Dragon Clan. Meanwhile, the girl is already resting. She was able to arrange a sleeping place for herself. Everything turned out to be much better than she thought, and even surprisingly, she was able to fall asleep quickly. And also, it turns out that as soon as she loses vigilance or falls asleep, this tale will appear every time and nothing can be done about it. She found herself in the magic tower so early that she doesn't even know what she did to deserve it. For the first time in a long time, Sylvia felt what it was like to fill her stomach and not feel hungry. She even managed to read many books that she liked, and most importantly, almost no one makes fun of her, although maybe everything is still ahead, and it is still too early to rejoice. In any case, everything turned out better than she expected, and this is already not bad and makes her very happy. It remains to hope that tomorrow everything will go just as well, and no unpleasant surprises will await her. Meanwhile, they are already in the dining room. She has taken a lot of things for herself. Breakfast should be hearty, which means they are here for a long time. Today she chose a jar of jam and an unlimited amount of bread to spread this deliciousness on. As usual, he didn't take a single piece for himself, and she has a mountain of everything. Sylvia doesn't see anything wrong with this. She thinks that it would be better with this one than to think about the opinions of others and remain hungry. Naturally, she thanked him for the room and even said that she liked the dark atmosphere. It sounded strange, but in any case, he was only glad. And also, when she sees the food in front of her, still so appetizing, she can't keep up with what he says. Now it's clear why she wanted to be alone yesterday afternoon. And in the meantime, the guy used soundproofing magic again. The girl only now realized why it was needed. And it turns out that with this magic, they can talk about anything, and no one will hear it. Everything turned out to be simpler than one might think. Sylvia saw here yesterday, approached them. She didn't even try to remain unnoticed. They were so engrossed in their argument that it wasn't difficult at all. But what's really strange is that she didn't even apologize for disturbing them, didn't introduce herself, and she even started acting as if she knew that they definitely wouldn't mind her company. She even started touching Sylvia, although the girl still has no idea who it is and what this person wants from her. She raised her head, looked at her, and even forgot that she was very hungry and had a huge sandwich in her hands. She's not embarrassed by anyone's surprise. The girl says that she really likes dragons and still hasn't imagined herself. Some time passed, and finally she suggested that we meet and get to know each other better. Helen Hilvengia, a powerful mage who ranks third in the hierarchy of the Magic Tower, has talent comparable to Mikael's abilities. Already at a young age reached the highest level in alchemy. At first glance it seems young, but her real age is unknown. They say that only silver hair, shining like rays of light, gives away her true age, which is much greater than one might think. Her main character trait is that she views all living beings around her as alchemical materials, which means her presence does not mean anything good. Meanwhile, the girl asks if the child knows that the first reagent was mixed with dragon's blood. She wanted to surprise her, but the girl replied that she always knew it, and also the fact that the sacred sword of the temple was made from dragon bones, which surprised her very much and even made her think. She is a very smart and brave girl who was not afraid of a stranger and reacted to her more or less calmly, although basically everyone is afraid of Helen. She starts complimenting her, trying to win her over, and hinting that they could become friends. Helen doesn't hide how much she is interested in her, but she never admitted the reason, and that's not surprising. At that moment, the guy got really angry. He reminded that in fact, they were not alone here, and at the very least, someone had interrupted an important conversation, for which he should apologize and leave immediately, before he does anything to her. If of course she has even a little bit of conscience. The girl starts saying that she has plans. She won't do anything to her and doesn't understand what the problem is because he's not the only one who has the right to communicate with the child. He didn't even listen to her because he reads that it is obvious that Helen brings only evil and is trying to befriend the girl only for the sake of benefit. She replies that who would talk, as if he is no different from her and is trying to gain the trust of the little dragon in the same way. The atmosphere in the canteen has changed a lot. They stop noticing everyone except themselves, and Sylvia takes advantage of the moment, finishes the last sandwiches and gathers strength. It seems that this day will be no less eventful than yesterday, and she should be ready for it. She cares so much about her diet that she wasn't afraid to stop them and ask if she could have a few more pieces. And after that, she asked to continue talking and pay attention to her, because in order to eat, she needs at least another half hour. Meanwhile, the plate is already full. She likes today's breakfast even more than yesterday's. And if you don't take this whole situation into account, the morning has started off quite well. She eats these sandwiches with such pleasure that the other two couldn't resist and also ate a portion. And then they just started looking at her and forgot what they were arguing about. What surprises them most is not the amount of food she eats, but her courage and calm in the presence of these two, because no one here feels so free. They never cease to be amazed at how strange she is. Even Helen admitted that it is rare for someone to behave so naturally in the same company as her and Mikael. When the girl thought that the girl was just too young and didn't understand who was next to her, the guy asked her to shut up and ordered her to stop talking like that to a child she didn't even know anything about. And that's not all. They've been here so long that it's time for lunch, and Sylvia doesn't mind. All this was prepared by a chef who has amazing skill, and you can't argue with that. The canteen menu is different every day. It's wonderful. Even though there's not a drop of joy on her face, inside the girl is really happy. She is not used to such variety, and until she eats everything to the last crumb, she will not go anywhere, so she told them. There is so much in this world that she can't wait for the next day and eat something new. If there was an opportunity, she would do only this. But unfortunately, everything is not so easy. Besides food, there are many things that are not so pleasant, but still, no one can handle it instead of her. While there is time, she enjoys it, because no matter how it sounds, she is crazy even about the taste of pure bread, without anything. She even wondered what would happen if she had some problems and was kicked out of the tower, because her taste buds would get used to this variety, to the quantity, and all this might not be there. It's hard to believe, but these two are even afraid to say a word to her and distract her from eating lunch. They wait until she is free, which even sounds a little strange. Sylvia didn't notice how she began to enjoy respect, even though she is a child. But some people treat her better than other adults, and this is already a big success. She feels so good here that it's scary to even think that at some point everything could change. Now, for complete happiness, she lacks only one thing: a family where they love her and don't try to ruin her life. Even though this will never happen again, no one forbids you to dream, but even this is very easy. It has gotten to the point that she already looks at the people around her and imagines that they most likely had all this. But she did not have it, and never will. She has so many terrible memories that it's hard to even remember anything good. That's her fate. Even her real family abandoned her, and probably these two are no different from them. Everything could be exactly the same, or maybe even worse. She's just a dragon, and that's why they're interested in her. It's lucky that the girl knows about it because she read the novel, but it still doesn't change anything. She's doomed to be lonely and unwanted. Even though her father is nearby, there is no point in this. He is cold to her, and even treats strangers better than when they first met a few days ago. At that moment, she mentally tried to support herself and remember that you can't relax. You don't need to rely on others. You need to go towards your goal. And even if nothing works out, at least you won't have to regret that she didn't even try. You will have to use all opportunities, resources, acquaintances, connections, absolutely everything to your advantage, as everyone else does. The next day has already arrived. She is already starting to arrange her room. She even cleaned it, and now everything looks much better than it was originally. After cleaning everything, here sparkles and shines. It is much more pleasant to be in such a room, and you don't even want to leave. It turns out that if she had the ability to use light magic, she wouldn't have to do anything. She would just have to think. Snap her fingers and order would appear by itself. But since she only has dark magic, she has to do everything with her hands and spend a lot of time on it. She doesn't want to ask someone for help. You never know. Someone might not like it, and the information that she's been here for 2 days will reach someone who shouldn't know about it. After she had already put everything away, all that was left was the laundry. A little had accumulated during this time, but something had to be done about that too. The girl went out into the corridor, started looking for the right room, and thought that the laundry room should be somewhere nearby. When suddenly she heard 2 magicians arguing among themselves about some work, she was afraid to catch their eye and thought that it would be better to wait until they left. She stopped around the corner. They passed by and seemed not to notice her. The girl listened to them worry about handing in their work, because there was a risk of getting a bad grade and saying goodbye to their dream. Meanwhile, they were walking calmly, not bothering anyone, when some guy stops them and asks why they look like they haven't slept for days, although in fact, they really don't look so good. He starts calling them names, although he himself is no different. He miraculously managed to prepare in advance. Therefore, he takes advantage of the opportunity and spoils the mood of everyone else, intimidating them at every step. Now it's clear who it is. He is often very bored. Because of this, he even pretended to be their classmate. He asked if anyone really wanted to sleep, and then he directed his power at them and said that now he would make them forget about rest. Now it is clear why it is better not to anger the magicians. You can find yourself in a similar situation before an important event and lose all desire to do something and try. In the end, he harmed not only those guys, but her too. All her clothes are wet, and she doesn't even know what to change into. This is the very case when you were unlucky to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Although if she had left a couple of minutes later, everything would have been fine. There are thoughts to become brave and turn into a dragon or try to light a fire to dry clothes. But inside the tower, it will be very difficult to do this. Even too difficult. Nothing can be done. It remains to just return to the room and rest a little. Apparently, it would be better for her not to go anywhere today, to stay in one place and not to communicate with anyone. It's lunchtime. The girl doesn't miss anything like that. She's already right there. She saw Mikkel at the table, and of course, she joined him. He noticed that something was wrong with her, asked what the problem was, and she said that she had a slight cold and had been feeling unwell since the morning, probably because of the wet clothes, in which it was easy to get hypothermia. It was surprising to him that a dragon could catch a cold, because he thought that they were immune to diseases and curses. But as it turned out, in her case, everything is a little different. Sylvia explained that he was misunderstanding a little bit because in reality, No matter how strong someone is, if they are a living being, they can naturally get sick like a normal person. Plus, she is half dragon, half human, which means she is weaker than other dragons. Until yesterday, everything was fine. They hardly even went outside. Mikael has no idea where she could have caught a cold and the virus. Most likely, if she tells him what really made her sick, he will just laugh and tease her for a long time. I had to say that while she was washing dirty clothes, all her dry clothes got wet, so she had to sleep in wet ones. As soon as the guy found out this reason, he was very indignant. Why didn't she tell him anything about it? Because he could easily find something suitable for her. Who would have thought that he would worry about her so much? He also says that things like washing can be done with simple magic. She could have just asked him for help and none of this would have happened. And then he realizes that all this time he was sure she could do it, but it seems he was very wrong. This is true, but only she has half. She has magic. But since only light magic can be used in the tower, she cannot use her abilities in any way. At that moment, she did not remain silent. I had to explain that she was from the clan of the Black Knight, so she could only use dark magic and that a little. And also, she did not study any other magic, so she was not very good at it and could only cope with washing by hand. Now everything is clear to him. The girl may not continue, and he thought, why are they telling him that she chooses in the room all day long, if everything could be done in a matter of seconds? This is the moment. He suggests going somewhere with him, but he doesn't tell her where exactly, just to make it more interesting for her. They have already come to some room. They start knocking on the door, but no one opens, and as it turns out, this is the room of the girl with whom they recently talked. She went somewhere and no one knows when she'll come back and nothing will work out. And the plan is a little spoiled. When suddenly something began that she didn't even expect, Sylvia just asked if nothing would work out without her, and he started looking at her as if he was leading her into some kind of trap. He starts saying that she doesn't even know how dangerous magicians are, and she makes a mistake by following him and thinking she can trust him. And then a phrase was uttered that almost left the girl speechless. He said that he was going to give her up for the sake of an experiment, but what these words mean, one can only guess. And here the most frightening, but at the same time interesting thing begins. The girl herself does not even know how to react to this, and he also warns that if she does not want to suffer, then it is better not to resist. He starts lifting her into the air with magic, then stops and she falls freely right into his arms. The girl screams, having no idea what's going on, and really, it wasn't a joke, and he really is not at all like she knows him. And here, for the first time, he learns that despite the fact that the girl looks very young, is in a human body, her weight is no different from a real dragon. When he tried to catch her, his back hurt so much that he had to use strengthening magic. So he became much stronger, but his back still hurts. It was as if a huge creature weighing more than a huge truck fell on him. In the end, as it turned out, it was a joke, and also that she would not relax and not forget where she was. I can't talk to him normally. He starts to scare me even more, so I just have to remain silent. He doesn't abandon her on principle. He holds her in his arms as if he doesn't want her to run away and not be able to see something. And here they finally came. Sylvia has no idea what awaits her next. She is already prepared for everything and is not surprised by anything. The guy approaches these two people and starts talking to them in some incomprehensible language, probably because of her presence, because there can be no other explanation. He asks them to prepare a teleportation magic circle, which means something interesting is about to happen and what remains is safe. After that, these people open a magic door. Some portal appears behind it, and suddenly, Mikael starts saying something again. The girl didn't understand any of this and didn't even try to figure it out. She didn't have any strength or desire to do so. A strong wind appears. She barely tries to see anything around. It is very light everywhere. She even felt a slight coolness. After that, he took her tighter and asked her to hold on tighter. There was still a little bit left. The main thing was to concentrate and not be distracted by anything else. Sylvia felt as if it was some kind of dream or a fairy tale. Everything was exactly as she imagined it as a child. If you could think that this was the most interesting part, then no. The most interesting part is yet to come. He promises her this. From this moment on, they will be outside the tower, although the girl has no idea what he wants to show her there, because there is nothing unusual there. On the contrary, as it seemed earlier, all the most interesting things could be seen in the tower, but not outside it. Here they are, already on the street, walking through beautiful places, and decided to go to one popular place. Aristocrats really like to come here. They choose clothes for themselves from the newest collections, and even make various pre-orders, but it is not clear why he brought her here. Judging by the fact that they greeted him and even said his name, everyone here has known him for a long time, and probably not for the first year. Everyone around is already waiting to take measurements and start sewing a suit for Mikael. They even started discussing what he would like to do this time, because usually his orders are not repeated. One of them thinks that he should take off this coat and put on a blue uniform, the color of which perfectly matches his eyes. And the second one thinks that red should be used to highlight his beautiful facial features. The third one doesn't agree with them. She would suggest him white because it's a classic that will emphasize nobility, restraint, and his status. In the end, they decided to do all three options. But there is one thing. Today, I need to dress him. And the young lady who was with him today. They certainly didn't expect this. Moreover, they didn't even try to hide their dissatisfaction, as if they couldn't waste their energy on unplanned clothes, even if it was just one outfit. In that case, he suggests canceling his previous order and getting busy choosing clothes for this child, because now it is more important. Word by word, the girl listens to them and remembers that he is the nephew of Princess Elia. The great magician Diomed is his uncle, and the best swordswoman of the continent, the princess, is his aunt. Such is the irony of fate. Princess Elia is the biological mother of Rosian, the protagonist of the novel Sword of Vengeance. She was close to Betsrika and joined her squad to pacify the king of evil spirits, and later it will be destroyed by Diomed. It is difficult to even imagine what will happen if Mikael finds out about this ahead of time. If only he knew who would be guilty of his aunt's death, everything could have changed a lot. In the end, by some miracle, he was able to persuade these women. They started taking measurements and even pretended as if there was no problem with it in the first place. At some point, while they were still busy, the guy decided to go to the palace, but the girl couldn't help but ask if he was accidentally going to see Princess Elia, to which he replies with a grin that no, because there are not only his aunt in the palace, but also many other people. In the end, he asked her not to go anywhere and to stay here until he came back for her. The palace, the main character of this novel, will also be there. Well, anyway, everything else will begin after her death. Meanwhile, the guy had already returned. He himself didn't even expect that he would be able to cope so quickly. When he came in, he didn't see Sylvia and decided to ask where she had already been done. Some man says that she was just trying on ready-made clothes inside and was about to go out. While there was time, he settled down on the sofa and began to remember her words when she told these people that she was currently 10 years old. She is too thin for her age. She looks like she is 7, and despite the fact that the girl eats a lot, she has not gained a kilogram in so many days. Out of the blue, he starts to get very nervous, because it turns out that in this regard, she is very similar to him. The boy was left without parents from an early age, but she was alone for these 10 years, and despite the fact that they were relatives, their life was radically different. At least they paid attention to him, and tried to make sure that the boy achieved something and received at least some status in society. And in the meantime, that woman distracted him and said that they tried to sew a dress according to a design that has been popular lately. But if they don't like something, they will definitely fix everything, as long as everyone is happy. The girl comes out of the fitting room. He sees her and can't contain his emotions. He never expected this. He sees her like this for the first time. Sylvia doesn't seem like herself, although probably it's just unusual for him as well as for her. Meanwhile, the princess is training in the palace. Then she finds out that Mikael has arrived and can't believe it. The guy who hates the royal family came here of his own free will, which is very strange. She wondered what he had done and what had happened that this man had ended up in this place, to which the assistant replied that as far as he knew, he had received a healing potion. This is also very strange because in the magic tower you can probably get something like this very easily, and she does not understand why he bothered so much, looked for it somewhere else. She has too many questions. The girl even thought that he was sick or a little out of his mind. This is much more likely than the fact that he actually came here without a special reason. Meanwhile, Mikael had already looked at several dresses, but thought that he needed to sew a couple more, just in case something else unusual would come out. Sylvia was already a little tired of trying on all these outfits, but it was still not enough for him. For example, this first one, with a pattern in the form of a yellow spring composition, was very nice. And this two-piece set with sapphires perfectly matches the color of her eyes. It's even better than the first one. The women thought that if that wasn't enough, they decided to wear a red dress with decorations and a beautiful ribbon around it. But he is interested in something unusual, something he has never seen, although he himself does not even know what the ideal result should look like. The girl has barely decided which dress is prettier. She's crazy about all of them and has no idea what he doesn't like again. In the end, he didn't bother the women. They had already done a lot. The guy asked to pack everything in bags. He would buy everything they showed him. The girl was sure they would choose one thing, and she would even be delighted with that. But they would take with them every dress that she was lucky enough to try on today. She starts to stop him and say that she can't take so much. One dress is enough because she didn't even count on that. He is going to update his entire wardrobe. Although before he had to wear the same thing, there were only two options for clothes. One was dried after washing, and in the second she walked around and so on in a circle. At some point, he asks her to calm down and just drink what he's about to give her. Only this is clearly not an ordinary water, to refresh herself after all this fitting. He holds holy water in his hands, which contains the sacred power of a high-ranking priest and the magical power of an alchemist. A healing potion that is very expensive, and also, it is almost impossible to get, even for those who have no problems with money and who are ready to pay any amount of money for it. As expected, Sylvia refused immediately. She said that she would not drink it and did not even explain anything. After all these purchases, such a potion is too much. He didn't have to do this, and she sincerely doesn't understand what she did to deserve this. All she wanted was to live in some comfort, and she already has a good wardrobe, food, and gifts in the form of a rare potion. To which he replies that if she doesn't listen to him, then they both will have problems. This is all part of his plan. This is not a real potion. He will explain everything a little later. But for now, she must do what he tells her. As it turns out, now she needs to play the role of his beloved little sister. He is developing a plan on how to escape from his aunt. And these guys, and a healing potion is needed so that she does not infect him. And then, if everything is clear and there are no questions, he asked not to waste time and play along with him. As soon as one drop penetrated her body began to feel very light and her throat no longer hurt at all. The guy said that they say that dragons are creatures endowed with magical powers, but it seems that divine power affects them the same way as it does people, although it may be because the girl is half dragon and everything works a little differently. In any case, he is very glad that he helped her. Everything looks very natural, although Sylvia herself still does not understand anything. All the bags are packed. Mikhail gives the money and even gives much more as an apology for throwing them an unexpected job. Now it's time to go home. Although the girl hasn't yet gotten used to the fact that some potion can work so well and in a matter of seconds. This time they used teleportation again, left the store and went around some corner, and from there they found themselves in the tower. They spent the whole day there, and now finally they have the opportunity to relax, lie on their soft bed, and not pretend to be anyone. Sylvia can't help but think that today she has received so much from Mikhail that it's almost too much. She wants to believe that these are sincere gifts, and that after a while she won't have to pay anything in return. Of course, she is grateful for all these gifts. The girl is delighted, everything is very beautiful and useful, but she does not like the idea that she is in his debt and is already thinking about how to fix it. She has no idea what this person likes, what he is interested in, and most importantly, how she can surprise him. He is a magician who probably already has everything. Let's start with the fact that Mikhail, described in the novel, is very different from the current one. With his connections and abilities, he probably already has everything, and whatever she comes up with, she will only waste her time. Perhaps it's worth thinking differently. The girl looked at the situation from a different angle and thought about what she would like to receive. Sylvia loves food the most, for her bread and books are a wonderful gift, but this is not exactly what you can please a magician with. After that, she had an idea to collect a bouquet of flowers, but this is definitely not an option. At the very least, he is not a girl and has definitely seen a lot of beautiful things in his life. Something less banal was needed, and in the end, she spent more than an hour thinking. She had some ideas, but all were in vain. At some point, she suddenly jumps up, says nothing, as if she had thought of something, and has no doubt that she can stop there. Meanwhile, she took her purse with her, decided not to waste time, and very quietly began to leave her room so that no one would see it. She checked to see if there was anyone on the floor by any chance, because if someone noticed or heard her, she wouldn't even have any story to tell. She had to act very carefully and constantly look around. There are several exits from the magic tower, including magic gates, and among them there are secret passages, the so-called secret space. Diomed often lost himself in his thoughts in the White Garden. They say that very rare flowers grow in this garden, since the only one who was there was Diomed, which means Mikael should be interested in seeing something like that. Besides, Sylvia heard that her father was away all day today, which meant that the staff wouldn't be in the hallway that often, especially at night. She is already starting to look around, but suddenly she hears that the doors of the very portal through which she traveled today with Mikael are opening. This can only mean one thing. Father has returned, so now we urgently need to hide somewhere. Otherwise, someone will have more trouble. The gentleman comes in very tired. He has no strength. He doesn't look at anyone. He barely got home, and that's for the best. The assistants greeted him. They informed him that his room was already prepared, and if he wanted, he could have dinner or, if he was not very hungry, a snack. Meanwhile, the girl is already on the second floor, and at first glance, the corridor looks normal, but there is a not quite normal door here. It only opens under certain conditions, and now she will have to come up with something about it. Sylvia must stand in front of this door and imagine a white garden in her head. Then she must whistle and turn the door handle. If everything is done correctly, the door will open. A couple of minutes, and the girl succeeded. She expected to try to open it much longer, but fortunately, she managed to save a little time. She immediately walked out through this door and found herself in a place where everything seemed like a completely different world. It was very bright, beautiful, and there was a special atmosphere. The mere thought that all this was created by magic turns her mind upside down. It's simply amazing and unthinkable. I want to stay here forever. Admire the beauty and enjoy every moment and forget about everything that happened before. There is a very unusual plant here. She has not seen anything like it in the ordinary world or in her past life. The girl feels like they are alive. These are the most beautiful flowers she has ever seen in her life. And now you need to collect a bouquet as quickly as possible, because who knows, maybe your father will decide to come to this place after a hard day to reboot, because it seems that this place literally heals any fatigue. Touching this flower, Sylvia felt something indescribable. If there was an opportunity to stay here, she would gladly do so. She had already forgotten that she was preparing a gift for Mikael, because everything was obvious. It was worth it. And of course, she herself would dream of receiving something like that, especially just like that, for no reason. Just think, if all this was created by magicians many years ago, then what they can create now, having gained strength, knowledge, and experience, she is overwhelmed with admiration, even from the fact that she thought about it. Although most likely, the matter may be that in past lives she never received flowers even on holidays. There were so many birthdays, her graduation, all the girls received gifts, were happy, and she felt like an empty space and didn't even dream of being in their place. All this has ruined her self-esteem, and if suddenly, someday, she is lucky enough to receive at least some bouquet, she will definitely be the happiest person in the world. This explains why she has such a hard time accepting gifts from Mikael and why she constantly expects less. Nothing foreshadowed trouble when suddenly she hears the phrase, "I never thought that a rat would appear in my garden." The girl completely forgot about time, lingered here, and now regretted it. It seems there is no point in explaining anything now. This man won't even listen to her, and it's probably better not to anger him now. Sylvia no longer doubts that she will be kicked out of the tower right now, that she will be left on the street, and everything that she enjoyed these past few days will simply disappear. Her father looks at her with such a look as if he wants to do something with her, but he can't only because she is a child. Now everything is more or less calm, but it is never clear what to expect from her father, especially when he is not in the mood. The girl looks at him. She has no idea what to say, because she is afraid to make things worse. Even her silence begins to anger him, which means the situation is extremely hopeless. When the gentleman realized that the girl was very afraid of him, he tried to lower his tone, but his eyes still reveal the whole truth. It is impossible to feel safe with him even as a child. Sylvia begins to be afraid of every rustle and is already confused about what is better, to talk to him or to remain silent. She can't tell him that she read the novel and knows more than he can imagine. She was silent for a few more minutes, and now he is starting to lose his temper. He is tired of waiting for an answer. So she decided to use the last method to find out the whole truth. He uses magic firstly to scare her, but it hasn't worked for a long time. And secondly, this way he can tell whether she's lying or not. And when he said a very scary phrase that she would have to be removed from his sight, Sylvia could not restrain herself and said that she was wrong. She explained that she didn't know that entry was prohibited, although everyone knows that no one could just open that door, and it didn't sound quite right, and it's true. The man took her behavior as if the girl was trying to get closer to him, but warned that she would never succeed anyway. The girl ignores absolutely everything he says, because she understands that he looks at her through the prism of resentment towards his ex-girlfriend, who is also her mother. This means that you need to find an approach to this person, and if nothing changes, he will never acknowledge her as his child. She interrupts him and tries to explain that this is some kind of misunderstanding. But as before, her words mean nothing to him. He simply said that she chose a convenient word and was naively trying to gain his trust. He doesn't like all these meaningless conversations, decided to repeat once again and for the last time that she is not his daughter, and if she doesn't want problems, then she should leave the tower and find her real father. After such words, she could have given up. You can't think of anything more offensive to hear for a child, but she is a strong girl and has long since decided to go all the way. She is ready to come up with anything just to stay here and gain time. Therefore, she says that she really got lost in the tower and accidentally discovered a beautiful garden. Therefore, it is excluded that someone was here before her and simply forgot to close the door behind them. In principle, this is impossible, but she already looks much more convincing and tries to convey that she did not have a special goal. Therefore, she apologized for coming here without asking permission and promised that this was the first and last time. In any case, she doesn't have to tell him the truth, just like everyone else. The girl doesn't expect to be loved, so she's not going to make any effort. She apologized again, wished him a good evening, and started to go to her room, pretending that she was really sorry about all this. In fact, she could apologize as much as she wanted, even though it was not sincere. But the main thing is that she was not kicked out of here, and at least she has a place to sleep for the next few days. The girl already thought that he wouldn't even turn around in her direction, when suddenly her father even deigned to address her by name and asked her to stop, and says that he heard that dragons live for thousands of years. They say that they do not get sick, and curses do not affect them. Therefore, it is not surprising that he has a question that has been tormenting him for many years. Why did her mother die then? And if at this moment you think about these words, it means that the man does not deny the truth, especially since he himself just called his ex-girlfriend her mother. After the question of why she died, I rephrased it a little, because it is much more important how true the information is that she died at all. The girl replied that she knew little about her mother because she didn't even remember her, but if she created it, it meant that serious circumstances forced her to. She made it clear that a man may not know the whole truth. That girl was sincere and he himself knows it. If she loved a man, then she would never in her life without reason act the way she did in the distant past. He himself had such thoughts, but he was too trusting and used to looking at the situation without any pitfalls. He perceived her words absolutely directly, as they sounded. Sylvia left right away on purpose so as not to say anything unnecessary, and it was very right. Her father stood in one place for some time and thought about her words, which means he is inclined to believe her and wants to figure everything out. He felt that the girl could be telling the truth, but he also didn't deny that this could be one of her abilities, and he just didn't distinguish it the same way as with others. And also, noticed that she was okay, even after she took on his energy charge, and if you think about it, when they first met, she was unusually calm for her age. The mere thought that he really is similar to that girl in many ways makes him feel uneasy. And then something very strange happened. Usually this didn't happen, but this time something amazing happened. Despite the fact that he has locked away his emotions, when he thinks about her, he feels discomfort and a terrible excitement, as if she is somewhere nearby. It's like a sword strike during a duel. Although one could say it's even worse. It's personal. It's something that's been hurting for so long and has left a wound behind. And out of nowhere, her voice appears. She calls him, Diamid, I'm here. But that's not all. She appears as if in reality, and asks if he knows that a dragon can only give birth to a child from someone he truly loves, and there is no other way. The guy is completely lost in reality. He doesn't understand what this is, where he is, and what it all means. He was just conscious, and this looks like some kind of dream. It is very symbolic that after talking to the girl about her mother, she appears and hints that if she had not loved him, they could not have had a child. When they talked, the girl began to evaporate. She was no longer as visible as at the very beginning, as if a strong fog appeared between them, and he returned to real reality. There are so many hints everywhere, but he still stands his ground, does not give in, although for his part, he does not even understand this matter, as if he is not interested in it. He is more than sure that she left him for real, of her own free will, and could not possibly give birth to a daughter for him. I wonder what should happen and what should be told to him so that he believes the truth, because all he does is not believe anyone, and he himself has not even tried to find out anything. In general, the matter is at a standstill, and everyone is interested in this except him. While the guy is here, he decided that he can't afford to get caught up in the old feelings. It's better to leave this garden as it is instead of destroying it. It's not worth it. He simply accepted everything that was in the past, let go of his love, and even thought about finding a new one. Meanwhile, the next day came. Sylvia already remembered what time Mikael woke up. She waited for him and brought her gift. This bouquet is so beautiful that it even seems to glow from within. The young lady insists on accepting this gift and hints that it cost her a lot. This is how she wants to express her gratitude, because lately she has a feeling as if she only receives, but does not give anything in return, and she thinks that this is very wrong. Mikael doesn't even know how to react to this. He's in complete shock, and his face at this moment looks like he's unhappy about something. Sylvia was a little upset. She apologized in advance if he didn't like something, although that's not the case at all. In fact, at the beginning, he saw that her hands were all scratched and explained that the bouquet was beautiful, but he was still more worried about her. It's strange, but she herself didn't notice it, and then it started. Mikael scolds her again. Supposedly, she managed to get into trouble again, and he had already told her many times to be careful, but she again made it worse for herself because of her stupidity. This is not quite what she expected to hear from him, although perhaps he simply formulated everything incorrectly and forgot to say the most important thing, that he was still very pleased. Some time passed, and he only remembers that, in fact, he didn't even say anything about it. He apologized and thanked her for her efforts because the bouquet was truly incredible. As soon as he told her that he had never received bouquets anywhere before, she became so happy that she almost screamed at the top of her lungs. She is so happy that she was the first one to do this for him that she can't even describe how wonderful it is. This is exactly what she wanted. Mikael saw for the first time that she could smile. He even liked it. And if only he knew that it took so little, it would be easier. Usually she had such an expression on her face as if she had already seen everything in the world, and only today he saw a smile that even raised his spirits. He looked at her very sweetly, although he tried to hide his emotions, but he failed. Sylvia saw everything. In the end, it was a very pleasant start to the day for each of them, and in the meantime, he decided to tell her something. It could be very interesting for her. These days, he started developing a magical paternity test, which means she is not just interested in it, she needs it. So once the work is completed, she will be able to get the approval of the tower's owner. All that remains is to wait a little. The girls didn't quite understand why she needed to wait, to which he explained that since she wasn't an adept of the tower, this means that if something happens to her, he will not be able to help her officially. Since the owner of the tower hates conflicts, no serious problems are expected in the near future, however. She needs a father who can protect her in the future, and that is exactly why he is working now, and without days off. He really wants to contribute to her happy future, so he didn't put it off and is doing it right now. It turns out that if it weren't for him, all this could have gone on for a very long time, and it's unlikely that she would have been able to achieve anything without his help. Suddenly, the guy has things to do. He is forced to leave her because who knows what he is missing by not being at his workplace, and now it is more important than ever before, especially for her. Lately, she has too much free time, and now, since it's only the beginning of the day, she'll have to think of something. You need to do something useful. You can count on Mikael alone, but you shouldn't. Initially, she didn't even count on this, so you also need to do something. It's a pity, but instead of believing in success, she has already resigned herself to the fact that in 7 years, a terrible fate will overtake her, and nothing can be done about it. That's why she has no motivation, and most of her time is just wasted. The girl thinks that since she has so little time left, she should appreciate every moment, enjoy life, and accept the fact that soon, all this will end. Every day is completely different for her. At first, she has a lot to do, then she has no strength. After that, she remembers that there is no point in doing anything anyway, and so on again and again in a circle. Meanwhile, she goes to her room, and the man, whom she had already met in the library, was watching her and Mikael from the side all this time. At the very moment when the girl passed by, he specially attracted her attention, laughed, as if she could not think of anything better than ordinary flowers, and hinted that he finally saw her alone, knows that her assistant will be busy soon, but it sounded a little ambiguous. She was already not very happy to see him, and after these words, even more so, Sylvia looked in his direction, and the sinister smile immediately disappeared somewhere. She doesn't really want to talk to him. He really confuses and worries her, and he also suspiciously appears at the most inopportune moment when Mikael is not around. And in this tower, if anything happens, no one except him will help her. It's very strange that the girl has the ability to notice someone's presence without even turning around. But she didn't even notice him. He hid himself on purpose with the help of magic. The girl feels it. All that remains is to find out what is happening and why he is doing it. He is too suspicious. He doesn't even hide it. He probably thinks that she is a little girl who is very easy to outwit. She is already very tense, looking at him attentively, because most likely anything can happen now. It's not for nothing that he stopped her. This man starts laughing strangely, tells how long he waited for this day, and then explains that he doesn't mean a specific day. And the ability to talk to her alone so that no one would disturb them. Mikael had been preventing him from doing this all this time, which meant that the man had been watching them, and more than once. It turns out that if it weren't for that very soundproofing magic that Mikael constantly uses, this man would have heard their entire conversation a long time ago. But he didn't succeed. That's why all he did was continue to think about why he needed soundproofing magic, because he was communicating with a child, which means there is some kind of secret between them. Sylvia is very scared. She says that she doesn't understand what he means and hints that she actually has things to do. But he only got angry and reminded her how she ignored him last time as if he was some kind of insect. And then the most interesting thing happens, but at the same time strange. The man calls her a dragon and exactly a second later asks, "Didn't she wonder how he knew about this, which he would now happily tell you about?" He understood everything from the image on her cloak. It depicts the symbol of the ancient tribe of dragons. Therefore, everything is very obvious and clear. This cloak was left to her by her mother, and she very often walked in it around the territory of the tower. Most likely, the girl did not promise to pay attention to this, but he noticed it almost immediately, but did not think that she had anything to do with it. But when everything fell into place, in his opinion, she was too careless and gave herself away. And also, he also had to read the ancient records of his family's library, and his guess turned out to be correct. Those two couldn't be interested in her just like that. And since there are no more secrets between them, he suggests being honest with each other and answering the question of how he helps. And if she answers the truth, he promises not to harm her. The man was sure she had given them something personal, hair, her tooth, maybe a nail. But she replied that she had not given them any of this, and no one had demanded anything from her. He got angry. He even yelled at her and explained that otherwise there would be no point in them keeping her around. Suddenly, he starts demanding that she give him at least something, at least a drop of blood, because if he doesn't hand in the research assignment, he'll soon be kicked out of here. He looks at her with such eyes as if only she would refuse. She would become his main enemy and would regret it very much. This crazy look says only one thing. If she doesn't run away now, she will really regret it. But she is still a child, and he is a magician who will obviously be stronger. It is impossible to resist, and the most terrible thing begins to happen from this very moment. The villain has prepared. He has something with him that will help him take a drop of blood from her. This time he is confident in himself and is not going to miss such a good chance. He wants to hope that he won't have to follow her anymore, try to make friends. Now he can just use the magic of force, grab her hand and not let her get out. At that moment, when there were only a few seconds left and he really started to cross the border, she had no choice. How to act fairly since he allows himself to use force against her? She has the right to use the same force. She gave free rein to her dragon half. Even her eyes and the hand with which she is going to defend herself changed. In a moment, she scratches his face, breaks away to a safe distance and warns that if he touches her even once more, she will no longer feel sorry for him. He immediately lost his vigilance, became a little confused and no longer looked as confident as he had a few seconds ago. The sinister smile disappeared somewhere, and the desire to repeat it too. It is unlikely that a man will approach her again and, even more so, will dare to use her for his personal purposes. She attacked him very unexpectedly, And then, seeing no point in staying and talking about anything, she simply ran off to do her own thing, and he continued to lie on the floor, trying to come to his senses a little. Of course, he shouted that he would soon catch her again, and then she would not get off. But it even sounded funny, although maybe he just didn't quite understand who he was dealing with. Although she might not have run away from him so much, the girl got scared, and it happens by itself. She still doesn't believe in herself, although she could have handled at least 5 of the same as that magician. She immediately remembered the words of Mikael, who warned that while she was without him, it was better not to go anywhere and to be wary of people, and especially magicians. She is valuable material for them, no matter how it sounds. That is the harsh reality, and nothing can be done about it. And then the most terrible realization comes to her. In the near future, other magicians can very easily find out her identity, and all because of that man, who most likely will want to take revenge on her in this way, and will not be the only one who will follow her. Sooner or later, others will also want to catch her, and it is unknown whether they will be as polite at the beginning as he was. They are all different, which means she must be ready for this. Now she needs to find some safe place where there are no people. After thinking a little, Sylvia remembers that she has just such a place. This is the same white garden, although it will be a little dangerous to appear there. This is the best option, at least until she has time to think of anything else. The girl just thought about it, immediately started running towards that door. She didn't even notice anyone around, and this time she didn't watch whether they noticed her or not. She runs faster and faster, there is very little left. A few seconds and now she is already near them. At the very last moment, all that was left was to whistle, and she almost did it, when suddenly she again remembered those words that began to stop her. All these images started appearing in her head. They seemed to stop her and not even let her touch the door handle. The girl remembers that she shouldn't go back there. If her father sees her there again, maybe this time she won't be so lucky. Suddenly, she hears someone running straight towards her, turns around and sees the man who, apparently, has lost his sense of fear or forgotten what she just did to him. He catches up, starts using strong magic, and says that this time she simply has no chance. Begins to direct some kind of force at her. Something green even appeared in the air, similar to fog, but denser in texture. With this, he hit her a little. Sylvia did not expect to see him here. Therefore, she was very confused and did not have time to react. In the end, it's very strange. But he succeeded when the girl lost consciousness and couldn't withstand such a blow. He tied her up, and he justified himself so strongly, as if he had caught something very valuable. And that is true, but this is too much. He even called her a rare research material. It's scary to even imagine what he plans to do with her next, if of course he succeeds and Mikael doesn't have time to find out anything. The girl is still unconscious. She doesn't feel anything, and when she wakes up, she'll probably be very scared. This villain can't wait to show everyone who didn't believe in him what he's capable of. But as it usually happens, if someone rejoices too early, usually in the end, everything doesn't turn out the way they wanted. He shouldn't underestimate the girl because she has almost come to her senses and is not going to give up. She even admitted to herself that although she was prepared for death and for any outcome of events, now she really would not want everything to end exactly like this. She still wants to live. And suddenly, a picture appears before her eyes of how everything ended in a similar way in her past life. This time, she doesn't want to leave the world so early. She has become stronger and shouldn't give up ahead of time. All is not lost yet. Movin is too busy and can't turn around to control her. While there is still time, we need to think of something and not let him get his way. And now he is already starting to get tired. He stops every minute, but still hasn't turned around even once. And that's a shame. He says that even though it's a dragon's child, despite the magic of relief and strengthening, it's still too heavy. And while he wasn't looking at her, Sylvia released her dragon half again, breaking the chain, and hit him with such force that he couldn't even stand on his feet. Movin will still regret that he dared to do this to her. He barely came to his senses. He starts to rise. His whole body is shaking, but he doesn't give up. Apparently, he's insanely afraid of leaving this tower. He was sure that she was tied up very tightly. It was simply impossible to get out, and as soon as he looked in her direction, he could not believe his eyes. He saw her crazy look, and in the meantime, even other magicians noticed the trembling on the walls. They did not understand what happened and thought that this was another experiment, and it was not even worth paying attention to. Meanwhile, the girl did not make the same mistake. She hit him not once but several times just in case, so he would definitely be unconscious for some time. And now, you need to run and immediately open up somewhere. You need to renew your strength. And unfortunately, the girl only now noticed that she had not broken the entire chain, and there was no strength left. In any case, at least she could leave, but it turned out to be not as easy as she thought. Her head started to spin, and she was afraid that she could lose consciousness at any moment. Meanwhile, Mikhail had already freed himself. And surprisingly, he didn't even go looking for her. Although it wouldn't hurt, he was calmly eating breakfast and doing it through force. He can't look at food normally, but if he doesn't eat today, it could end badly. This happens to him once a week, because if he stays hungry longer than this time, he can end up in the hospital with stomach problems and more. He even managed to discuss with this girl how much one can trust Sylvia and whether they really know everything about her. The girl says she can't be sure, but there are people in the world who have only one choice. For some, it's natural to be alone, and for others, on the contrary. The guy still didn't understand what these words meant, and she quickly changed the subject as if it didn't matter. They also discussed the girl's diet. The girl said that there was nothing surprising about it, and the older Sylvia was, the more she would eat. At some point, a magician approached them. He apologized for interrupting their conversation, but Mikhail didn't even listen to him and got very angry. He doesn't understand who dared to interrupt him and was already ready to take revenge on this person for such impudence. The girl was able to calm him down and asked the guy what was going on. She seemed to sense that he wanted to say something important and gave him the opportunity. It turns out he wanted to tell that the child they both took care of was now in the outbuilding, although it seemed like he had nothing to do there. Other magicians have already gathered around her. The girl is unconscious, lying in chains, and has not woken up for several hours. Lucky that they didn't take advantage of it, but just watch and don't know how to help. Some left, some stayed, and fortunately, there isn't a single villain near her yet. Meanwhile, Mikhail is already here. He started studying all the information, talked to everyone who has been here for a long time, and when he saw the strong binding magic and bruises, he immediately understood everything. He is sure that this is nothing more than a kidnapping, and as soon as they started telling him something else, he got angry and even pushed this person away. It was a little wrong on the one hand. Everyone wants to help, and if it weren't for them, the guy might not even know about it and would sit quietly in the cafeteria. He couldn't believe it was her, because he asked her to be careful and thought that she was definitely in a safe place. But as it turned out, she disobeyed again and got into trouble. It is clear that she does not even have the strength to come to her senses. She defended herself a lot, but has not yet had time to recover. He was very angry with her. They were going to have a serious conversation, because if the girl had listened to him, none of this would have happened. He no longer knows what words to use to explain to her that there are many dangers for her here, but he is much more worried about who harmed her. And then something strange starts. The walls shake, the floor trembles. Everyone became very scared, because this has never happened before. No one understands anything. People are in a panic. It's not even clear what's better, to run away from here or to stay where they are. As it turned out, it was all Mikhail. He had no more patience, but how his power can help in this situation, no one understands yet. One thing is clear. He is serious and will definitely find the person who did this to Sylvia. Even his colleague began to be afraid of him. She took the girl in her arms because it was still unknown what he had planned and what would happen next. She asked him to calm down, but he doesn't hear anyone. He's focused only on his own and he can't be stopped. He was so angry that the girl couldn't help herself and started talking to him anyway. Usually it's very dangerous to distract him, but now she tried to make him understand. It's not the time for emotions. We need to help Sylvia. And first of all, it wouldn't hurt to dispel all these binding spells. Unfortunately, she doesn't do this. A guy or anyone else understands this better, but not her. He had to use his power with great tenderness to touch her, although he himself was not sure of it. But surprisingly, everything worked out. He was extremely careful, asked everyone to move away and concentrated like never before. When they started to look at her more closely, unfortunately, they noticed a huge number of bruises all over her body. These are traces of attack magic that certain mages may have, and this significantly narrows the circle of suspects. At that moment, Mikhail couldn't figure out what angered him more, her carelessness or the person who dared to do this to her. He asked her so many times to be more careful, as if he felt that something like this could happen at any moment, and that's exactly what happened. Meanwhile, he says that he can't stand it anymore and asks the girl to stay with the girl for a while. He decided to go and express his opinion to the father of this child. This is a very brave act that he wanted to do on the first day, but it seems that the time has come and there is no point in delaying it. Gentlemen, as usual, they come out of their office. He has a lot of documents, cases, and everything else, so it was not difficult to find him. The tower owner usually doesn't like anyone to bother him with trifles. Mikael knows this, but this time, everything is really serious. He boldly enters the office, warns that he is obliged to listen to him, because to some extent, this concerns him too. The gentleman had not seen Mikael so determined for a long time, and even became interested in what had happened to him. The gentleman even put aside all his business, gave him some time and began to listen attentively to why he came. The man had already imagined everything that his imagination could come up with, but what he heard, he certainly didn't expect. His daughter was found unconscious? Yes, the guy was not afraid to call the girl the daughter of the master. And also, he said that it seems that one of the Tower of Magicians found out that she is a dragon and planned everything in advance. The guy expected to see at least a little surprise, concern, but he asked what the attack on that dragon had to do with him. He believes and says that dragons are arrogant and do not consider people equal to themselves if representatives of this species were able to hurt. In his opinion, it would be better to just die and not count on anyone's help, in the form of Mikael or anyone else. The guy reminded that she was a child. They had to take care of her because no one else would do it. Reminded that he had already asked not to give in to emotions and not to pay attention to how old someone is. And also that he has already said more than once that she is not his daughter, and he forbids doubting this and allowing himself such assumptions. The gentleman doesn't understand at all why the guy got involved in this, because he has other responsibilities, and can he really feel sorry for that dragon? The man advises to get rid of the thoughts that distract him and the feelings that clog his head. It seems there can be no compromise here. The owner of the tower does not change. He does not know what compassion and morality are. For him, this does not exist since he lost the meaning of caring about someone, and even more so, trusting. The guy didn't understand that it was useless to talk about it, so he went to a backup plan, asked to recognize that child as an adept of the magic tower so that he could use a paternity test and prove that the gentleman was wrong. The man got a little angry. He doesn't remember giving such an order or telling him to do more than what is required of him. Mikael no longer knows how to talk to him normally. This person does not accept the opinions of others and considers only himself to be right. Initially, the master told him to decide for himself what to do with the dragon. The guy wanted to study it to learn more about this type of dragon, but now everything looks like this. It's like Mikael is trying his best to protect her and help her stay here longer. That's true, but maybe now is the time to answer something. In the end, a common solution, but they didn't find it. The guy didn't succeed. He's already leaving and doesn't understand. Is it really that hard to soften the rules of the magic tower a little? There is nothing wrong with that, and at the very least, it would be used for a good cause. At the very last moment, when he could have simply closed the door behind him, he changed his mind and said the most important thing. Their job is to make this world a better place, and he sees nothing wrong with helping a child who is left all alone. One might think that the man would rethink something, think about it, and not react as aggressively as in the beginning. But as it turned out, the guy only made it worse. The gentleman used his power against him and thought that since some people don't understand with words, maybe they will understand through pain. He found it very difficult to breathe. And after that, the man grabbed him by the neck and told him never to dare to interfere in other people's business again. Asked if he really wanted to play family so much, and then said that he had already seen a fool who lost his life because of family ties. It was his brother, and concurrently, Mikael's father, who died defending him because he was a very kind person, but in the end, he suffered himself. It was as if a hint that if you act in the same way, sooner or later you can end up in the same place and make the same mistake. He immediately had these terrible memories. He will not forget that day for the rest of his life, and in fact, he was always afraid to remember it. The father loved him so much that he was ready to give his life for the safety of his son. He loved him and sacrificed himself without even thinking. With this, the gentleman wanted to remind him that now he has a choice, to think about the future, to go towards the goal, or to focus on others to his own detriment. Then let go of his neck, gave him a few minutes to think, and hoped Mikael would learn this lesson properly. The guy could barely catch his breath. Now he understood that talking about it was useless. He needed to act independently, and coming to this office, hoping for understanding, was a mistake. He still won't listen to anyone. He will stick to his opinion and will try to help the child no matter what. It would seem that everyone around him is putting pressure on him, saying that he should do this, but something inside tells him the exact opposite. Probably all because of that situation when he once and for all remained grateful to his father that he was the only one who could help him. And now, at a conscious age, when a person appeared who is exactly the same, no one can help except him. Everything repeats itself, and he seems to feel like he is in the role of his father. Meanwhile, the girl, as she promised, stayed with the child. She looked after her all this time, did not go anywhere, and in fact, she was even surprised herself that she began to worry about her. She is so small, defenseless, that it is impossible to even think about doing otherwise. She deserves at least a little support, because it's hard to even imagine how she feels here among the magicians who only want to benefit from her. It is not difficult for the girl to guess why everything reached such a state. One of the rules of the Magic Tower, the instigator of the riots in the tower, will be punished. Well, as expected, together. Where the most important thing is the result. The period of research work, there were magicians who violated this rule. This time one of them found out who Sylvia was, and most likely they decided to use her as an experimental material. It sounds terrible, but that's how it was. In fact, the girl could easily punish the one who broke the rules. But the only problem is that, would the tower owner allow it? And if she had only heard their conversation, she wouldn't even think about it. The tower's rules apply only to its mages. And since the girl is a stranger here, if the lady acts without a good reason, she also won't be able to avoid punishment. And this is what stops her. Suddenly, the girl began to come to her senses. She was already making some sounds, moving, but still she had not fully returned to consciousness. Mikael would take care of everything else. At some point, the girl starts to talk to her mother in her sleep. She even cried a little. It is clear how much she misses her and wants to be near her at least for a moment. The lady heard about the girl's mother. She knows that she was a dragon of the Black Night and died shortly after Sylvia was born. She assumed that most likely the child was simply looking for a mother whom he didn't even remember, in her opinion. Perhaps this was the only thing she could rely on all this time. If you remember how it all started, then first Sylvia came to the tower to find her father. But in fact, what happened turned out to be even worse than if he had not been there at all. In fact, she sincerely regrets that the child's fate turned out this way. At first, she did not attach any importance to it, but now she understands that childhood trauma is not something serious, and unfortunately, it haunts many throughout their lives, and some from the beginning to the very end. She even felt like she was starting to get old, because she had never behaved like that towards people she should not care about. And here she had become attached to someone else's child in a matter of days, and was sitting with him instead of doing something else. Meanwhile, someone knocks on the door. It turned out to be Mikael, but he came in no mood at all, and this is not surprising. Now he will tell you everything. He walks so slowly that she already has a lot of questions. The girl does not understand what happened. She is even afraid to imagine what the owner of the tower told him and what she will hear now. I would like to hope that he is like this because he is tired, but unfortunately, this is not the case. And now she will find out about everything. The guy didn't waste time. He immediately said that the gentleman didn't care what would happen to the child. He read that if she died after this incident, it would be for the best, to which the girl replied that frankly speaking, it was expected, but she personally did not agree with it. While they are here alone and no one can hear them, he said that he does not want to leave this child in this state, even if he has to be punished for disobeying the master of the tower. He cannot ignore that some villain took advantage of her situation and offended her. It turns out that she also completely agrees with this. A lot of time has passed since the last time their opinions coincided, and it doesn't even upset her. She even asked to leave this matter to her, as if she was going to do the same thing, only herself. It was very unexpected from her. He even asked if everything would be okay with her, to which she replied that of course, she had lived long enough to not be afraid of anything. Besides, punishing the guilty is her job and direct responsibility. She originally planned to spend her last years in comfort, but Sylvia interested her so much that her plans changed slightly. The girl is sleeping. She doesn't even realize what's happening now. It seems like she now has not only one friend, but even two, and it's wonderful. Meanwhile, Muvin tries his best to hide from those around him. He even puts on a hood and covers his face. Classmates noticed him and asked why he didn't notice anyone, as if he was ignoring him. And of course, they decided to stop him. They rip his hood off and ask if he's really so hard at preparing to present his work that he's even stopped communicating with everyone. He pretends that everything is so, although it's obvious that it's not so at all. And then they ask him if he heard the news about the child who has been seen frequently in the magic tower lately. Yesterday, for some reason, the girl was found unconscious and bound with magic spells in the outbuilding. And of course they said that Mr. Mikkel and Mistress Hilvenja were furious about it. He pretended that he had nothing to do with it. His classmates didn't guess anything either. They just asked him to try to avoid them, as they all do. When suddenly, at the very last moment, when they had already said goodbye, the guy noticed that his classmate didn't have glasses, and his whole face was in some kind of equals. But he explained that he had simply made a mistake during the experiment, and there was nothing wrong with that. Suddenly asked him to be more careful. They are not amateurs but professionals. Then thanked him and wished him all the best. Meanwhile, the villain stepped aside. He began to think about what to do next. As soon as the child wakes up, he will tell the whole truth, and then the most terrible thing will begin. He will be exposed. And also, his glasses disappeared right in the place where everything happened. By some miracle, they haven't been found yet, because then it would have become clear who harmed Sylvia. He even began to calm himself down. Remembered that the dragon was not even an adept of the magic tower, which meant it was too early to worry, especially considering the fact that your master hasn't done anything yet. She's nothing more than valuable material. In any case, he can beat himself in this as much as he wants. There are more and more people on the girl's side lately. He only had to calm down for 1 minute before Hilvengia found him and said that they needed to discuss something. At that moment, he got goosebumps all over his body. He started shaking all over and no longer looked as confident as he had a few seconds earlier. I wonder how the girl understood that it was him, because Mikkel didn't tell her anything. Does she really have another ability? Although it's unlikely, maybe she just goes to everyone and asks who knows or saw what. The guy didn't even have time to turn around and greet her before she tangled him up, just like he had tangled the child in chains. This means that she knows more than it may seem, and decided not to waste time and punish him without any explanations or proceedings. Her power is so strong that he has no chance, which means justice has finally caught up with him. He starts screaming very loudly. Although the more attention he attracts, the more people will find out about what he did. The girl herself doesn't know why, but she wasn't so aggressive at first. She was just planning to talk, but as soon as she saw him, everything happened by itself. He also tried to defend himself with his power, but nothing worked. The girl knows how to neutralize magical power, and dealt with it in a matter of seconds. She starts to squeeze him so hard and doesn't feel sorry for him, as he did with the girl. It's time to answer for his actions, and now no apologies will help him. She only advised him not to resist, because it would only hurt more, and she was not the one who would feel sorry for him. In the end, she dragged him to the basement, tied him up and said that this was just the beginning. All the fun would start right after the girl woke up and told what exactly he did to her, and why. He will pay for every tear she sheds, for every wound, scar, and bruise on her body. He won't get off easy, and he already understands that. It's probably not even worth mentioning that she will limit his diet, and this is far from the entire list of what he will have to say goodbye to from this moment on. And then the excuses began that he didn't want to hurt her. He just needed her for one thing, although everyone understands perfectly well why he caught her. And what could have happened to her if the girl had not found the strength to defend herself, hit him, and buy time while he was unconscious? It's all so terrible that the girl doesn't even want to talk about it. She's already understood everything and doesn't see any point in staying here. Just think about what to do better, deal with it yourself later, or invite Mikkel, which will be even more interesting. But since the girl promised that she could handle it alone and the guy had something to do, then of course she would have to stay a couple more minutes. And here the most important thing begins. She opens some kind of potion and says that if he dared to use someone as material, then he himself must be ready to become material. And for everything to be fair and honest, it will start right here and now. She pours this liquid on him, and at that moment, the man experiences indescribable pain, which he wanted to give to Sylvia. No matter how he tries to apologize, no matter how he regrets his actions, time cannot be returned. All that remains is to suffer and be tormented by his own idea. Meanwhile, Sylvia sees complete darkness in front of her. She doesn't understand what's happening and where she is. She doesn't feel anything, doesn't see anything. Some strange feeling of loneliness appears, and also that it seems like she's about to see someone. The girl didn't want to stand in one place. She goes forward even though she doesn't see anything, but she goes and begins to remember her past. As soon as she thought about it, she immediately felt some pain, remembered that she was doomed to a terrible fate and again lost the meaning of doing something, striving for something and trying to change everything. And then the light appears. She finds herself in some room, but this is still, obviously, not reality, but just a change of scenery in a dream. She sees in front of her a mother who is lying on a bed and holding a small child in her arms, and this child is her in the past, who does not even guess what awaits her in the future. Unfortunately, she was unable to talk to her. The girl seemed to be watching them from the side and understood that no one sees her. She simply overheard a sweet conversation between a mother and her daughter, which in fact never happened, because as everyone already knows, the girl could not stand it and died immediately after the birth of the child. The girl doesn't understand why she sees this and what she should understand about it. She has never observed herself as a little girl from the outside, and it was a little unusual. Suddenly, another woman appears, who is clearly not a friend, but rather someone with whom they did not communicate very well. That woman says that her mother made a stupid choice. Although if she had refused the child, she would have lived much longer and supposedly it was wrong. The girl tried in every way to protect her child, her choice, and explained that it was her personal business that did not concern anyone. She got very angry when she began to realize that everyone around her did not understand her and was trying to convince her otherwise. The girl begged for help to save the child's life. She was ready to sacrifice herself and said that her decision would never change. The main thing for her was that the girl would remain safe. For this, she gave her to the Dragon Clan. But who would have thought that even there, Sylvia would be in danger? Unfortunately, at that moment, it was the only option. The girl begged this woman to swear that she would look after the child and, if possible, help as best she could. In the end, the woman swore. The child's mother calmed down and then asked to leave her alone so that she could spend this time with Sylvia, because she did not know how much time she had left. It was not easy to look at this situation from the outside, especially knowing that all this is in the distant past. It was very painful to watch. She already wanted to go back, but the dream continued, and she could not even close her eyes. Something prevented her from doing so. After that, she returned to that darkness again. Something began to press on her. The girl could barely hold on, and only one thought about her mother helped her, because it was only thanks to her that she was alive now. She stayed in this state for a very long time. She didn't like it. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't get out of the darkness. And suddenly, some noise appears. Then she opens her eyes and sees that she has returned to reality and is very happy. Mikkel and his girlfriend are arguing next to each other. This conversation concerns her, but for now, she doesn't understand anything. She just sees them, and that's enough for now. With every minute, the sound gets louder and louder. She starts to hear everything around her, but they don't even notice her. It turns out that this is her room. The girl looked around and was convinced of this. Because of this, she even felt a little calmer, because suddenly, she could stay here as long as she wanted and no one would disturb her. Suddenly, she tries to get out of bed. They notice it and can't believe that finally, the girl has regained consciousness. Who would have thought that after everything that happened between them and how angry the guy was that she didn't listen to him, he would hug her as if she were his own child. He is so happy to see that everything is fine with her that he has already forgotten about everything bad and could not even restrain himself. He shed a few tears and admitted that if something serious happened to her, he simply wouldn't be able to survive it. It's such a sweet moment that even Sylvia didn't expect anything like that from him. She thought he would start screaming, but in the end, it's quite the opposite. The girl asked the guy to step aside and asked the child if she was in pain and how she felt. The girl replied that everything was fine. She felt rested, had slept well, and, as it turned out, had slept for 10 whole days. Now it makes sense why she had several dreams and slept as if she wouldn't want to go to bed for the next few days. At that moment, the guy came up to her again and said that he had something to say. He wanted to apologize for leaving her alone then, because if he had been there, none of this would have happened. The villain took advantage of the situation and attacked her right at the moment she was left alone, for which he is angry even at himself. Since everyone already knows what happened to her, now she is interested to know what happened to Morven, where he is now and whether he is alive at all. She only mentioned his name when they immediately turned away and pretended they hadn't heard anything. as if they didn't want to tell her anything about it yet. The guy says that she needs to rest more. Besides that, he has a lot of work to do, and the girl smiles and asks if she wants to eat. It becomes clear that they are keeping something quiet. She even had to ask this question again and ask them to stay. Mikhail doesn't understand why she is so interested in finding out about this, and asks why she is interested in this at all, to which the girl replies that she would like to meet him in person, if of course it is possible. In the end, she was told that even if she tried to find him, nothing would work anyway, because they had already taken care of everything, and she didn't have to worry about it. They answered without any specifics, although the girl wanted to hear much more. But in the end, she didn't understand anything. At some point, she stopped looking at them, thought about something, even got angry and suddenly screamed loudly throughout the room. The girl believes that she has the right to know the truth because it is her business and says that they cannot hide anything from her, and also warned that if they try to deceive her, she will personally approach the owner of the tower and ask a few questions. The guy was indignant. He asked her not to do it because everything would only get worse. But Sylvia wants to know the truth, and it is not yet clear whether they will be able to agree on anything at all. At that moment, the girl could no longer hide anything. She changed, that they were forced to deceive her, because in fact, they punished the villain without the owner's permission and did not want her to know about it. In fact, the girl thought so. She can't believe that these two people took an unjustified risk for her sake, although they don't owe her anything. She simply asked him to stop trying so hard for her and said that she had long since come to terms with the fact that she was alone and did not count on anyone's help. She finds it much more convenient to deal with her problems on her own than to feel indebted, as she does now. She sincerely thanked each of them for their help and said how pleased she was to feel their care, and admitted that she couldn't even imagine what she owed them now and what she needed to do to at least slightly thank them for everything they had done for her. Even though the girl was asleep all this time and doesn't know what happened without her, she will soon learn something that she won't even be able to believe. She became for them not just a child who could be a relative of the owner, but also a friend for whom they are now ready to do anything. For example, this lady, like Mikhail, they risked their future very much. They could leave the tower on the same day when they tried to protect it, and this means that it is much more important to them than everything else, and they managed to prove this in practice, and more than once. A week later, the capital's central market outside the Magic Tower, Mikhail has no idea why his colleague called him here. She didn't explain anything. She just asked to be here at a certain time. Very strangely, but here he saw Sylvia, who should have stayed in the room and dined quietly, but she, as usual, did not listen to him, and says that she came for groceries, but got a little lost, although she should have been in the tower a long time ago. Hilvengia sent her for groceries and she did it on purpose. Her plan is for these two to end up here and spend time together. At first the guy got a little angry, but then he thought that maybe it was done with good intentions, and there was no point in getting angry, because nothing bad happened. At first he didn't even understand what he could do here, and the girl didn't either, and she immediately understood what was happening. But over time they figured out where they could go, and went to a very interesting place. Everything would be fine, but she barely has time to catch up with him. And because of the crowd of people and his small stature, it is very difficult to follow where he turns.